iOS 14 was one of the biggest changes to Facebook ads in a long time, and I made a bunch of videos back when it was first being rolled out, but now that it's been about a year to a year and a half, I want to cover the current state of this whole iOS 14 mess that we have ourselves in now. What are the ramifications if you decide to skip it, why we're doing it in the first place, and what are the kind of 3 steps you have to do to be in compliance with iOS 14 changes. And we're going to go through those 3 steps in step-by-step fashion as well. So the first thing is, what are the ramifications of just skipping the iOS 14 thing entirely? Well, first I need to talk about what the whole iOS 14 thing is in the first place to talk about what happens if you skip it. So back, when iOS 14.5 was being rolled out by Apple was imposing this new change to limit the amount of data that advertisers could track on their users on websites and in apps on their platform. And so Facebook and Google and other companies had to come up with solutions to satisfy Apple if they wanted to continue to run ads to iOS users. And there's a whole bunch of things being talked about, and a lot of things ended up changing over the duration of it happening. But we kind of came up with this thing where you had to verify your domain with the platform if you wanted to track activity happening on your domain or your website, which means you needed to run your ads through that domain, and then we needed to tell the ad platform which events we wanted to track. Now, this was only for iOS devices, so iPhones essentially. But because of that, what are the ramifications if you skip the whole iOS 14 thing? Well, if you're running a conversion campaign, and a lot of what I talk about on this channel for using Facebook ads to drive streams to your music on Spotify, Apple Music, etc., you can't run your ads to most iPhone users if you don't do the iOS 14 setup. iPhones are roughly, I think, a third of the smartphone market, so you just kind of lose most of that third of the smartphone market. And for some people, this is not a big deal. For most people, I'd say if you skip it, you'll have a 10 to 15% performance impact. So by all means, if you're looking through my iOS 14 setup videos in this video, you're like, oh my God, I don't know, I don't think I can do this right now, it's just too much. You can skip it to just get started running your ads, and they won't work as well, but you can at least get started. Now, for some people, there are more extreme cases where the performance can be pretty dramatic. Like I've seen some people when they run their ads, most of their ad spend goes to iOS devices. And so for whatever reason, that might be the case for you. And for other people, it might not matter at all. So if this stuff's stressing you out, feel free to just proceed, see what happens, and then kind of just make sure you do it at some point. Because even if it's 10% difference, even if you're spending $1,000 a year, that cost savings pays for whatever stuff you'd have to do to set up the iOS 14 stuff. So as I mentioned, there's 3 general things you have to do. You have to prove to Facebook that you're the owner of your domain. You have to configure your landing page service, because the way that I run a lot of my conversion ads, I'm sending people to a landing page, they click to go to Spotify, Apple, or whatever, and that's when the conversion occurs. So we need to have that page be on our domain. And the third thing is we need to tell Facebook what events do we want to track on that domain, again, for iOS users. And so let's walk through this step-by-step in Facebook ads. So I'm just an ads manager right now. The way that you go to the whole domain configuration thing is we go to business settings in the bottom left. And so in business settings, this is, by the way, the worst part about Facebook ads, is business settings page. You're going to want to go to brand safety and then go to domains. Now, important thing to note, you have to do this on a business manager account. You can't set this up on a personal ad account. So you may need to configure a business manager account to run your ads instead of your personal ad account. Now, you see I have a bunch of domains here. And I have some domains that I have not set up for demonstration. So you don't want to use a subdomain. You see how this is forum.generousstudios.com? When I verify generousstudios.com, that also verifies all subdomains like music.generousstudios.com, listen.generousstudios.com, etc. So you don't have to do a subdomain. So now I have this domain listengenero.com that I don't have verified. And there's a bunch of ways to verify. So you can add a meta tag code to your HTML code. You can upload an HTML file to your root directory. This is fine if you have a website that you're using. But if you don't have a website, you just have the domain, then using the DNS text record option is actually the best. And so it's going to give you this little code here. And you can just click copy to clipboard. And then you go into your domain provider. Here I'm just in this website, synthesizeraddict.com. It's a new site I'm working on. And you go to your DNS record section. You add a record. The name is just going to be the content, you're just going to paste that code. Type is going to be TXT. TTL, as far as I know, doesn't matter. I just always choose half hour and then add DNS. Now at this point, you might have to wait. Sometimes this only takes 5 minutes, like 5 minutes after you do that step, you come here, click verify domain, it'll say you're verified. Other times it'll take a few hours, and sometimes it'll take a couple days. So make sure you do it right, but most cases, like 10 minutes later, you should be up and running. If it takes longer, it could just be that you have to wait more, but it could be that you did something wrong. So that's the first big step. How do you verify your domain on Facebook? Now, the second aspect of it is you have to run your ads through that domain. And if you're using a website, that's a no-brainer, but we're often using smart link landing page services such as Feature FM. That's what this is here. And if I go into my smart links thing, by the way, if you want a discount on Feature FM, I do have a link in my description. But you could also use Hyped It, and I have a link down there as well. Or you can use ToneDen. You can set up a custom domain on all of these platforms, and they all get the job done. Now you can see here, my link is streamandrew.com, and I think I have a way to zoom in. So streamandrew.com is what I use for my Andrew Southworth links. This is a domain I bought. And now with Feature FM, you have to use a dedicated domain for Feature FM. With ToneDen and Hyped It, you can use a subdomain. So on Hyped It, I actually don't remember what I have. I think it's like music.listentoandrew.com or something. And on ToneDen, I have like td.generastudios.com, and I have like music.andrewsouthworth.com. So the important thing is, you're going to have to look at the tutorial for whatever landing page service you're using. Because on Feature FM, the way that you get that tutorial is you click down here, and then you look for, apparently I sent them a message, custom domain request form. And they're going to tell you, you have to be on these plans to use a custom domain. You have to change your name servers for your custom domain with your registrar information. So you can go in here, you can go to name servers, and you would change your name servers here to match whatever Feature FM is telling you. And they have some tutorials here. And then you just fill out this form. You tell them what plan you're on, you tell them your name, your email. You give them that TXT record, this thing here, so when they transfer the domain over to them, and you still own it, it's just hooking it up to their platform, they can put this record in to verify your domain for you. So with Feature FM, it's a little confusing, and it takes about a week, but it's a one-time thing. Now, with services like Hyped It and ToneDen, and I do have a video for ToneDen you can check out right here, but they all have their own help guides and tutorials. That's something that's going to be different for every single platform you're using, and most big smart link platforms support it, but not every smart link platform supports it. So that's important to know. So at this point, you would have hooked up your custom domain, right? Now, next, we need to go to Events Manager, because remember that third step that I explained, we have to configure, we have to tell Facebook what events do we want to track through that domain. So if I go into my EWM Pixel, and I go to Aggregated Event Measurement. So this is where, so you choose whatever pixel you're doing, go to Aggregated Event Measurement. This is where we tell Facebook what events do we want to track for iOS 14 plus devices. So you just configure web events here. And I'm going to see all the domains here that I have verified. So you won't see this until you verified your domains. And then you click on a domain. By the way, musicgrowthmachine.com, go check it out. It's essentially the blog equivalent of this channel. I'll have a link in the description. But to configure the events on here, this is also going to depend on what landing page service you're using. So for every ewmmusic.com, I have this configured with my Feature FM, and so I have all these Feature FM custom conversions. And so it's a little complicated with Feature FM because first, you have to make the custom conversions. So I have a video here on how to make custom conversions. But in the case of using something else, like ToneDen just uses a view content conversion. And so if I go to, I don't know, streamlink.com, this is another domain I have. I don't even remember what I hooked up to this. I go into Manage Events, I click Edit. And by the way, it used to be the case where you could only edit this page once every 72 hours. It would lock you out. Now that's not the case. But you would just do Add Event. And if you're using ToneDen, you'll just choose your pixel. And then for your event, you'll choose View Content. Easy peasy with ToneDen. Using Feature FM, you have to choose Custom Conversion and then choose that custom conversion you made for Feature FM. Same for Hyped It. You would make the custom conversion and then choose the custom conversion that you created for Hyped It and add it to your events list here. Now the order of these events does matter because the way it works with iOS 14 is you can only have 8 events maximum, and only the highest priority event will be tracked. So if you have an event that tracks when people visit your page and when they click on the page, you want to make sure you have the click event higher, because otherwise what will happen is when Facebook sees that both events occurred, but it was an iOS device, it'll only track the highest priority event, and so they won't track your click event if the view event is higher priority. So rank them in the order of actions that are going to occur, and make sure that your highest priority events are actually highest priority on this page, otherwise you might run into issues. So there's also been some kind of myths going around with iOS 14 that I think are important to bring up, and one of which is that conversion API, and if you have no idea what this is, then it might be kind of confusing, but a lot of people have thought conversion API might be a way to get around the whole iOS 14 thing, and that's unfortunately not the case, because once the data gets into Facebook, they're still processing it like it's from an Apple user, and so they're respecting the privacy just as it was from a Pixel. So conversion API will help because you'll be collecting more data, but it doesn't solve or get around the whole iOS 14 thing. Now, another myth that I've heard, or that I've, I guess not heard, but that people bring up, is that the data tracking for your conversions is necessarily going to be significantly worse, which is not the case, because that's the whole point of this aggregated event measurement. What's really the big impact of this data, it's not that your conversion campaigns are necessarily going to be missing more data than they were before, although there is a little bit of that. It's that your retargeting data is going to be less than what it was before. So if you're using retargeting data for custom audiences, or you're making lookalike audiences, you might see a shrink in data for that now than you would have prior to iOS 14. So if you're not dealing with retargeting, it's not an issue. But generally, like, your conversion campaigns still work because the way aggregated event measurement works. They're doing some statistical modeling, and Facebook seems to be pretty damn accurate when I compare the numbers between my various like platforms and what I'm seeing on Facebook, at least according to what they were before. The bigger problem compared to iOS 14 data loss is actually with just ad blockers. So ad blockers in Chrome, or people using Safari, contributes to a much bigger data loss than iOS 14 itself when it comes to measuring data in your conversion campaigns. So if you want to see how I use Facebook ads to promote my music on streaming services, you can check out this video right here. And if you want to learn more information about this whole custom domain, iOS 14, and the whole conversion campaign setup to promote your music, I have a course right here that you can also check out. Anyways, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next video. Bye.